Welcome to the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast with psychologist Dr. Doreen Downing. Listen in as Doreen interviews people who felt they didn't have a voice or who suffered extreme speaking anxiety. You'll hear stories about how they struggled to speak up, what they did to find their authentic voice, and the confidence they now feel to speak up and make an impact. If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. And now, here is Doreen.
Hi, this is Dr. Doreen Downing, host of the Find Your Voice, Change Your Life podcast. And I have Dr. Julie Lopez today with me, brand new friend. And as I'm getting to know her, so will you. Hi, Julie.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, well, I'm recovering from a cold, but as you said, it sounds like my voice is in working order. So I think we're good to go.
Perfect. That sounds good.
Let me read the bio that you sent in. Dr. Julie Lopez delights in guiding high achievers, executives, and CEOs through the unconscious advantage so they can move aside hidden roadblocks to health, wealth, and personal alignment. She is an author, speaker, entrepreneur, and human systems expert, particularly versed at working with implicit memory. Oh, Julie, that is so loaded with good stuff. How do you when you I know you just waved it across, but so what do you think when you hear that back?
Oh, it's just a long career. And I think what I'm looking forward to today is talking a little bit more about my more human journey and my own struggles with, I would say, my authentic voice, as opposed to a performative voice that I think I was blessed with or adapting with throughout my developmental years. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for opening it up. And let's start with the idea. I know that you just said blessed. I'd like to hear more of what that means. But the early years is, a psychologist looking back at, well, what were those formative years and how did we feel confident or not? Because that's where voice is either heard first and welcomed, applauded, that whole stage of development or not. And somewhere along the line, we head into school and then we head into, the social peers and do they accept us or not? So that's a whole journey. So that first, whatever you want to focus on, whatever stories you want to tell about that part of early life.
Thank you for all that because it is so influential in terms of the idea of developing a voice. And the main thing I want to share, and then a little bit about how it impacted me, was that I was relinquished by my biological family at birth. So I did not grow up with anyone I was biologically related to. And then I was adopted at 3 months old after spending the first 3 months of my life in an orphanage. So
Mm.
speaking up, I feel like this is just a critical part of the story I'd like to tell about finding my authentic voice. Because what I've come to know through my 3 decades of rigorous study about human development and specifically around people who have had that relinquishment experience is that I was laser focused on not being relinquished again.
Oh, that runs shivers in me. That feels
Mhm.
really truth right there. Ah, power. Ooh.
Yes.
But from pain, right?
From pain and that innate instinct that we all have to survive. And think about little babies when they're born, we don't have teeth. We don't know how to walk. We don't have a bank account. We're pretty much screwed if a caregiver doesn't care for us. It is literally primal to make sure that we're going to survive. That's how we're all built. Yeah. And so deep down somewhere, and this is where it gets probably a little bit more into my personal passion around implicit memory, which no one knows what that is. I'd be happy to talk about it later, but it's these deep unconscious codes that live inside of all of us, was this innate drive to survive and essentially to not be rejected. So, Doreen, and do you want me to call you Dr. Doreen, Dr. Downing,
I
or?
think if I can call you Julie, you can
Yes,
call me
I always
Doreen.
tell everyone to call me Julie, please.
Yes.
I think that's why I waved away your little bio that you said, because it feels sometimes like all those fancy things make it harder
Yeah.
to relate in a human way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was blessed with the ability to articulate ideas. I was blessed with a high intelligence, and I was blessed with the family that adopted me. They were very encouraging of my voice and my skills and all those things. But what I didn't realize until I was in my 20s is a lot of my performative behavior was deeply driven by that experience, that very significant experience I had in my prenatal life. And then up until that time when I was adopted, at those early months, I didn't have a primary caregiver. I was one of 20 babies in a maternal home. And I think it just laser focused me in on getting a gold star, a little gold star, for
Mhm.
everything. So I was very
Yeah.
articulate, but I was focused on things that weren't authentic to me. We would call it, as psychologists, had an external locus of control to the max
Yeah.
and wasn't as connected to what I wanted, who I was. Like answering those questions were impossible for me to answer.
Yeah. Oh, I get it. I really get. And then when you just did this, people who are listening didn't see Julie put the gold star on her forehead, really, just pointed to her. And so this whole idea of look at me, even at, oh my gosh, 3 months. And the instinct to say, pick me, look at me, and I'm, you know, I'm good. I'm gonna be good.
But don't give me away,
Yeah. Oh.
right? I know it still makes me sad.
Yeah, me too. I feel it. Yeah, I have empathy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But of course, that affected then what I invested my energy in speaking,
Mm-hmm.
because as an adaptive mechanism,
Uh-huh.
I actually wasn't rejected by anybody.
Ah.
I was everything to everybody. I was part of the jocks. I was part of the nerds. I was part of the popular people. I was part of the shy people. I was part of the druggies. Like, I just was part of
Julie,
all the
so
group.
was I. Oh my gosh. I see a mirror. I've never seen such a mirror of my life. Oh, I look forward to what we're going to uncover here today. It's uncovering for me too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, what a image you just painted of of somebody who could adapt and fit in and be accepted.
Yes. Be accepted by everybody.
Yeah.
But what do they say when you're everything to everyone, you're nothing to nobody, something like that.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was
who are you to yourself, let's say?
exactly. Yes. And
So
that
in terms
felt
of
secondary to survival for me.
so in terms of voice, then let's go back to that idea of being
Yes.
everything for everybody. What does that mean for voice? Lots of voices, huh?
So many voices adapted to what my audience wants to hear,
Uh-huh.
right? And so I do believe, and I was excited about being on your podcast because you have this passion for helping people find their voice.
Yeah.
And so if someone looked at me from age 0 to 20, I would say about 22, where I started doing some much deeper introspective work, you would have said, oh, she's completely articulate. She's in the student government. She's the captain of the swim team. She speaks up for this. She's a mathlete. I mean, everything, Doreen. But I was not using my authentic voice for anything. I didn't even know what it was. Honestly, I couldn't have even spoken from that. So somewhere way deep down, I looked extremely confident. I had the skills, I had practiced speaking and speeches, and I was able to deliver, but I wasn't speaking confidently about myself,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Oh, like I said, it's a mirror. I would say, I got awards for being the most all-around person in school. I was homecoming queen. I was head of the cheerleading squad, leading cheers. I did the claw because we were the bears. Bear claw. So I understand what it's like to be out there and be popular and yet be disconnected, not even know that there's a disconnection yet. So something must have happened that made you more aware that you were disconnected.
Yes. So, believe it or not, like I said, I was a mathlete, and I was always looking for cues outside myself for what I should be doing. And so, what other degree to pick for my undergraduate studies than engineering as a female in the 80s? Well, my parents and my teachers thought it was a good idea. I didn't even know what it was, and I did it because I could.
Uh-huh.
Because you know what happens when your friend has been, pinned underneath boulders and you get that danger messaging. Suddenly the blood rushes to your arms. You can pick up a boulder you could never pick up before. I
Mhm.
had that kind of intensity around success and performance. So I got through it, but I started having whispers of, gosh, I wonder if I'm ever going to do something I like. Am I ever going to focus my life in a way that I want? Just
Whisper,
started in college. I was
whispers,
like,
whispers,
but I
whispers,
still had
whispers.
to survive, right? They in
Uh,
my mind. This was so unconscious, Doreen. Like this was just autopilot. It was like these little whispers. I knew sometimes I was really unhappy, but I was still performing. And then I was still performing. I got my job out of school. I got a really fancy job that everyone thought was very successful.
what was that? What was that, by the
Oh,
way?
I was a consultant for what's now called Accenture, Anderson Consulting. So I got a high salary. I had a per diem. I was flying all around. I was 22, 23. The rules were different then. So I was flying my friends around. I mean, I was just all the external things,
Hmm.
but I wasn't happy and I knew it. I was crying every day. I wasn't crying sad because I still wasn't conscious enough. I was crying because I was so bored. I was like, this doesn't mean anything. I don't even know what I'm doing here. I was basically having, yeah, like an existential crisis, I would say.
Ah, uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
that's how it started all kind of coming together.
Was there a moment?
Mm, this was happening over the course of 4 or 5 years, and there was a moment. Well, there were two moments that come to mind. One was in college when I remember sitting outside under the stars with a friend and like just praying for some kind of guidance. And I think what at looking back, I think it was for some kind of data from inside of me as opposed to outside of me, like just something that was authentic to me.
Mhm.
And then another real critical turning point was a trip that I took to Spain. I
Mhm.
was visiting friends that were part of, Anderson, now called Accenture, is a global organization. And I had made a lot of friends from Spain
Mhm.
at our global training site where we were for 3 years. So I went to visit them all. And on the plane going there, I sat next to a psychiatrist. And this is important because I was on vacation visiting people that lived in different parts of Spain. I was traveling alone. So I had these train rides where I was journaling, and a
Yeah.
lot of our conversation just landed with me. And I had started therapy years prior because I was unhappy. And all of this kind of came to a head. And had been introduced to the things that I've been studying for the last 3 years, which are these non-talk based therapies. Because, of course, like a lot of adopted people, the root of my struggle was before I would have had any conscious thought. That doesn't develop till the hippocampus develops. at 3 years of age. It was all stored in my implicit memory, including those codes, including any sense of what was going on with my body. And so I think all these little seeds were planted in those 5 years, and it came together on that trip to Spain. And I came back and I started researching what I could do, and I changed my career and I went back to school. It just all changed. I started making choices based on what was going on inside, and I got a lot of these like non-talk based therapies that helped me change some of those codes driving my survival behavior.
Uh-huh. Oh, big breath for making space for all of what you've already shared. There's so much more I'm going to ask about this journey that you're taking, the choice and what that then led you. But I'm going to take a quick break and make space for all of yet of what I want to explore with you.
Sounds good.
If you want to get started right away to find your voice, download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com.
Hi, we're back now. I'm Dr. Doreen Downing, spending a wonderful time already with Dr. Julie Lopez, exploring early childhood and through her life coming to terms with an unhappiness, but that unhappiness was not realized until she woke up slowly, it sounds like. It wasn't an aha moment. It was more of a hey, whispers, I think is the word you used. A whispering, had chosen a life based on external pressures, but then finally came to terms with those pressures that then brought forth a new life. So you say you chose a new career and you went back to school. Tell us about that.
Well, that was interesting and painful a little bit. It was exciting because I
Uh-huh.
was finally picking something that I wanted to do. I was authentically interested. I think a lot of that was driven by my whole experience of relinquishment and survival and perfectionism and performative kind of behavior. But what was painful was I didn't really have my sea legs. And some of those forces, in particular, my parents,
Mm.
were not proud of my choice.
Oh.
And I remember going to hear my father speak at a conference, and he was so proud about me being there and introduced me as an engineer. And I
Uh-huh.
was like in my second year of graduate school.
Yes,
And
yes.
I said, "Oh, I'm actually studying something else." And he continued to talk about my engineering degree and working for this consulting company and how I'd traveled around the world. And it was so painful. And the woman
Uh-huh.
listening could see that I was getting upset. I was trying to, you know, not make a scene. And it
Yeah.
was hard that she was more attuned to what was happening with me than where my father was at that moment. So things like that stick out in my mind about having to show up in the world with something that was of authentic interest to me and
Uh-huh.
be true to myself in that
Mm.
way. So
But there was a little angel there you saw who
yes,
was
that
listening.
made it, I know that made it so much more painful. But yes,
Yes.
she really saw me. And I would say there is a feeling that's very different than that performative type of posture that I started to become more and more familiar with when I was doing things that were
Uh-huh.
aligned with my interests.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting because I see your work and I see all the great things that you're doing with people to help them find their confidence and learn how to really connect with people and to communicate what they want to communicate. And what I would say about my journey is before that moment and before this investment in being absolutely myself on the planet and even knowing what that is, that I
Mm.
that all of my verbal skills were in the service of nothing really. And so I do make a distinction there about this connection with my authentic voice or my authentic drives or my authentic desires as being really pivotal and important in my life. And I would even say that what looked like confidence prior to that
Yes.
moment
Yes.
wasn't because I didn't even know myself.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I so hear you.
Yeah.
Yes. My question is then what came to you about what was authentic and how did you, I'm pointing to my ears. How did you hear, but how did you know? What does the difference?
Well, I can say now, after, gosh, this has been 30 years ago that this new life started for me. It has a it has a visceral feeling
Mhm.
to it that actually feels like an exhale, like this is the right thing, and it reverberates and resonates with me. And I notice that with my choices. I notice that with my boundaries. I notice that with what I engage in or I don't engage in. So that's what I would say in hindsight. I do feel that a big piece of that was being able to pull up information in my nervous system that I had no explicit memory for in order to change the automatic drivers in my body that were compelling me to do some things that undermined my authentic voice, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely, because I do get the experience. That's what I'm talking about. And then beginning to identify what feels more automatic as opposed to what feels in a sensorial way. You said a visceral way. What there's a there's a dropping down and knowing, finally knowing what authenticity feels
Yes,
like,
exactly.
and what voice that comes from a deeper sense of self and more authentic self feels like. I'm doing that feels right sense that you come to know, you come to say, there it is,
Yes. It,
or there it isn't, and ooh, can I make that choice? And that's the courage to
right.
step into courageous voice. And I call it more courageous confidence than confidence. I love that you said confidence can look a certain way and feel a certain way. Yay, I'm confident. But are we really courageously confident? So, and it sounds like you know the difference now.
I love that term. I might have to use that. I love it.
Please. Yeah,
Courageously
reshare.
confident. It's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I love
So
that.
moving on into the fact that you know and you had that experience on stage with your dad. So we're starting to move in. Well, what do you've learned and what are you doing nowadays that helps others find who they are and the strength to be more of who they are wherever they choosing to do that?
Yes. So I am very passionate about this work with the unconscious. It is a part of memory that we don't
Yeah.
have any recall to. It goes beyond the blind spot, right? With a traditional coach who can see things that you can't see, it's literally unknown. It's invisible to yourself and to any other person. And I know how to find those things in implicit memory, and I know how to change those things.
Yeah.
So it has a whole myriad of applications, and it's been really exciting to do this work and to develop in this way clinically for the past 30 years. And more recently, actually in January, I'm launching a program for high achievers, CEOs, business owners who are very driven, but get to that point where they feel stuck. They know what to do, they know how to do it, they're able to do it, but they're not doing it because those type of people are going to have the drive, the intelligence, the know-how to really apply themselves to becoming their own master over being able to identify and change implicit memory using a bunch of the tools and techniques that I offer. So that's what I'm passionate about. And honestly, I want the whole world to know about this. That's the book that in the intro, you mentioned I'm an author. It's all about implicit memory and specifically how it works, what it is, and how we all have it,
What's
and
the
how
title of the book, Julie?
it's called Live Empowered. Rewire your implicit memory to thrive in business, love, and life.
Lovely. I really like that it's more specific. I know that the neuroscientist Pittman
Uh-huh.
and Carl, who did the rewire your anxious brain,
Yeah.
right? And so that what you're doing is, well, the implicit memory is where your brain gets more anxious. So let's go there.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And the implicit memory is, well, I could go pretty deep
Yes.
on this topic. I don't want to bore your listeners, but I'm really into the science behind all of it.
Yes.
And by changing what's in there, not only most people come in because they have a specific goal in mind, or they have something
Mhm.
that they want to change, or they're invested in a certain reality of what's happening in their business or what's happening with the relationships that matter the most to them. But I have had such incredible physical breakthroughs that correspond to what people are coming in for. Like, since I mentioned I was performative and perfectionistic, I had a CEO that I worked with who came in because she knew that she was driving her C-suite crazy and that she was too controlling. She'd been told that multiple times. That's all she wanted to work on. She couldn't help herself, like getting into the details and making sure things. It impacted her personal life too, but she came in for her business,
Uh-huh.
worked through all this stuff. We reworked some pretty much like life or death kind of codes she had in her system. But the cool thing, Doreen, was psoriasis that she had had for over 40 years cleared up completely.
Uh-huh.
She didn't come to me saying, "Oh, I want to clear up my psoriasis." But when we took the stress load down in her nervous system, it cleared up. This is
Uh-huh.
so cool. It's
Yeah.
so amazing. And that's what I'm into.
Yeah. Well, I know that listeners can hear you, but those who are watching can also see the spark that just goes on when you talk about it. It's just you radiate joy and excitement about what you get to offer people and the breakthroughs. And so thank you. Thank you so much. We're coming to the near end. We're coming near to the end. And I would like to give you an opportunity because there'll be show notes and there'll be links to all your books and whatever you've got to offer. But I'd like to open up the space here at the end to take a breath and listen into this now moment. What do you want to say before we end? Is it to the audience? Is it just a message? What?
I've got it. I know.
Okay. Okay, sweetheart. What?
Here's the message, and it's to everybody. And it is this: our bodies, our physical body, our emotional body, our psychological body, our spiritual body are incredible, and they're resourced, and there's incredible ability that they have. It's so sophisticated. And my biggest message is that every single person has invisible codes that may be responsible for roadblocks or stuck places or things that they avoid, and they can be found and changed. No one is broken. There is always hope, and there's a whole world of things that you cannot see. I promise you they're there. And I'm going to tie in a public service announcement. Adopted people on this planet are overrepresented in suicide statistics. They are overrepresented in drug treatment programs. They are overrepresented in residential treatment programs. And most adopted people have a whole bunch of codes in their implicit memory. And I want to change that story for people who are adopted and anyone else who's inherited a bunch of codes from their ancestors, from their childhood, because that trapped, lost, hopeless place is something that we can definitely do something about.
Period.
Period.
Right. And a great, great, huge, I can't get big enough word here to say thank you. And from all of my heart, my being, my soul, thank you so much, Julie, for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And I love the work that you're doing. I'm actively involved in a Toastmasters club. And I feel like communication and our voice is the single most powerful tool that we have in this very, very short time that we have on the planet. So I applaud you for really helping raise so many people's voices.
Right. I like to say from the boardroom to the bedroom, your voice is your most powerful asset,
I
right?
love
Yeah,
it.
you can
I
take
love
that
that.
too.
I love that.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for being with us today for this episode of Find Your Voice, Change Your Life. Each person Doreen interviews shares what has helped them find their voice. You can learn from these guests and find your voice so you can be confident to speak up and speak out. And remember to download Doreen's free 7-step guide to fearless speaking at doreen7steps.com. We hope you enjoyed the show and will return next time. Until then, goodbye for now.